Raheem Kassam is with us. Are you saying that are these the refugees you're claiming that have been coming in from Syria and Iraq?
Well, actually, it goes back a lot longer than that, Sean. And by the way, thanks for having me on your show. These countries, the high welfare state countries that you're citing there, have actually thrown their doors open to asylum seekers, refugees, migrants, whatever you like to call them, for much longer than this current iteration of a much broader migrant crisis has been going on in Europe. These guys were the forerunners of the policy that you're now seeing implemented across the rest of Europe. These were the ones, if you look at Sweden as a key example, these guys, high welfare state, lots of handouts, government housing, all of this. Go to Sweden, you're set for life. And they kept taking and they kept taking. Well, Sweden now is having to appeal to the European Union for emergency aid because actually it's taking so many migrants, the highest proportion per capita of quote-unquote asylum seekers, that it actually can't handle it. The police are overstretched. Their infrastructure in terms of the actual welfare systems are in massive amounts of debt. You've got no-go areas in places like Malmo at the moment.
Well, everyone claims there are no such thing as no-go zones. And yet I have actually seen them. I've seen video of people in them.
Yes, I mean, we sent one of our journalists, Oliver Lane, out to one of the no-go zones about 4 weeks ago. He was told by his police liaison there, don't you dare go to this area.
Right, but what I want to know is this, because you're talking about a rampant rape culture that is emerging in Europe, and you're talking about a media that is turning a blind eye to all of this. Are you using police statistics to back this up? Where are you getting these numbers? Because they seem so high. And are you saying that this rape culture has emerged in a particular community? What are you claiming?
Yes, well, the way that the Norwegians and the Swedes put together their statistics on this stuff, slightly different to what you and I in the Anglosphere would know. They don't sort of break them up. They have different interpretations of what a violent crime is and what a rape is and what a sexual assault is. But by and large, I mean, these numbers that we're talking about are coming from Sweden, coming from Norway, coming from Denmark. They're released in the local, in the sort of local press as the police try to sort of sneak the figures out without going national with them. But they're actually pieced together by researchers in those countries, specifically with regards to Sweden. We rely a lot on one of the insurgent parties out there, actually polling at the top now in Sweden, called the Sweden Democrats. They actually put the numbers together from all the different districts and have released some pretty shocking, the statistics that you're talking about. Yes, to answer your question, unfortunately, we have to look at this for what it is. These tend to be North African and Middle Eastern immigrants who are perpetuating this sort of violent sexual crime. If you speak to some of the people in Sweden, their claim is that, well, they're from a different culture where they don't understand respect for women, and thereby this goes hand in hand. And that's why some of these countries are now embarking on sexual education programs for migrants once they get there, and once they get their asylum processing done, they're then sent to different language school, and one of the new ones is going to be sexual education school. So they wouldn't be doing that, and in fact this is happening in Germany as well. If this wasn't a major problem,
let me
people are starting to wake up to it. But
let me bring in Brigitte Gabriel.
Of the migrant crisis, they're not going to be able to keep up.
Let me bring Brigitte Gabriel in, founder and CEO of ACT for America. Brigitte, you've read this article, you've seen this, and I'm thinking, are we really, is this now a new normal that societies will turn a blind eye when you have an emerging rape culture?
It is shocking what is happening in Europe, considering women's rights and women's movements and how liberal and democratic Europe is. But what happened in Europe, Sean, is, the theory of boiling the frog. If you throw a frog in boiling water, he immediately jumps out. But if you put the frog in cold water and turn the fire on, you can actually cook the frog. The Islamists in Europe, especially with the rise of Islamic immigration after World War II in the 70s, when Europeans started bringing the guest workers to work, and these Islamists Islamists brought with them their practice. It started under the radar. Europeans didn't really care. They did not pay attention. They thought, oh, they are different people. They do things differently. And really, there was not much rape. There were some rape. There were some beating. There were some abuse. There were some female genital mutilation. But it wasn't as bad. Today, Europe is drowning, and Europe is experiencing the merging of Eurabia, where they lost control of their culture. They can't even speak, even if they want to, because at this point, the Muslims are so many of them and so empowered that they are actually drowning the voices of those who wish to speak, because those who feel they need to voice their concern about the status of affairs in Europe feel they can be beaten, they can be a target, they can be killed by these Muslims, and now are afraid to speak. That's how they got to this point.
So you're saying that you think that it is the immigration policies of Europe and that people that maybe have come from countries that have lived under Sharia where women are treated poorly, you're saying that culture has been transported and it's even now emerging into a rape culture? I mean, do you agree with that?
Europe has become Eurabia. Rape in the Arabic world is accepted. It is not a crime, because in the Islamic world, a woman is the property of a man. He can do whatever he wishes with her, and therefore there is no concept of rape. The only bad thing, and it's not even bad when you rape the infidels in order for you to conquer them or subjugate them or humiliate them. So women who are not Islamic are also your property because they are not Muslim. They do not understand the concept of having the right over your own body to decide what you want to do with your own body and the protection of your body. That's a foreign concept to them, and no amount of education is going to change the mindset that is so embedded into the psyche of Muslim men who are now immigrating to Europe and who are also immigrating to the United States, by the way. Let's not forget that we're seeing a rise of Islamic immigration, not only in Europe, but throughout the world, Australia, Canada, the U.S. In Europe right now, however, the situation is at a crisis point, and the world needs to pay attention now before it's too late to our societies to start doing something about it.
I mean, when you say Eurabia, you're basically talking about Middle Eastern values of Muslim countries now being transferred to Europe.
Correct. That's exactly what we have been seeing. In my book, They Must Be Stopped, which came out in 2008, I discuss Sharia courts and the legal system in Europe, and I give England as an example. And back then, in England alone, they had 85 Sharia courts operating parallel to British courts. Where Muslims were wanting to be ruled under their own Islamic law. In 2004, domestic abuse in Europe was so bad by Muslims killing their own children in the name of honor that the European police gathered together at The Hague for a major international conference, bringing together all police officers from European countries to discuss the new phenomena of honor killings, because they were estimating that about 1,500 women a year in England alone were dying because of honor killing. All the cases were being reopened, even as in 2006, 2007, 2008, cases that previously they thought it was just murder, they were being reopened. And when you look from 2008 until now, the problem has quadrupled, not only because of the immigration, but because of the Europeans became desensitized and the Islamists became so empowered that by the time the European woke up, it was too late to speak or say anything, and now they fear for their lives. And the same thing, Sean, is starting to happen in America today. And that's why it is very important to make sure that we do everything we can to stop President Obama from bringing Syrian refugees into the United States, because we're going to be importing the same problems that Europe is facing today.
Unbelievable. Raheem, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I'm afraid Bridget is absolutely correct. You know, there are a couple of examples I'd cite, especially with regards to what she's saying about people sort of not willing to speak out about this stuff. There was a recent case in Italy where a pro-migration activist was actually raped by a migrant. and was told not to speak out about it because it hurt their ideological cause. These people believe in no borders. They believe that the nation state is entirely fabricated and has no place in modern society. And it's this.
We look at, for example, the way women are treated in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and the UAE and under Sharia in Muslim countries. And I've been puzzled and bewildered by the lack of concern by the left in this country that claim to have a monopoly of compassion for women and are so upset about Mitt Romney having women's resumes, and yet this culture where women can't drive and women must dress a certain way and can't be seen in public without male relatives and 4 male eyewitnesses for rape. I've been amazed and stunned at their silence. It's been conservatives that have been outspoken, but we're talking about a clash of culture. In other words, if people grow up under that mindset, that type of government thinking and that belief system, it's in direct conflict to what the United States and our Constitution does to protect all people's rights. So you're talking about a conflict of civilizations emerging in both Europe and the United States. Is that a broader way to look at it?
Yes.
I think that's probably right to say. You've got now a massive growth in the Muslim population in Germany, and one of the left-wing professors in Germany recently remarked that actually it's becoming so large that Germany, which usually rules with a coalition governments, will no longer be able to form governments in 10 years' time without an Islamic party as part of that coalition in government. The Christian Democrats are in charge there. He said they'll have to change their names because no Muslim is going to vote for them. And so in order to try and reach out, to these people that they've openly welcomed into their country, they're going to have to change the fabric of their politics, the fabric of their society.
All right, let me play Tony Abbott's comments on this very issue. Listen to this.
The imperative to love your neighbour as you love yourself is at the heart of every Western polity. It expresses itself in laws protecting workers, in strong social security safety nets, and in the readiness to take in refugees. It's what makes us decent and humane countries as well as prosperous ones. But right now, this wholesome instinct is leading much of Europe into catastrophic error. All countries that say anyone who gets here can stay here are now in peril, given the scale of the population movements that are starting to be seen. There are tens, perhaps hundreds of millions of people living in poverty and danger who might readily seek to enter a Western country if the opportunity is there. And who could blame them? Yet no country or continent can open its borders to all comers without fundamentally weakening itself. And this is the risk that the countries of Europe now run through misguided altruism.
That's a powerful statement, Brigitte.
That is a powerful statement, and because it is transforming cultures, it is transforming societies, it is transforming values in Western Judeo-Christian nations. I mean, look what happened in America. Just last week, Michigan City becomes the first to elect a Muslim-majority city council. Hamtramck, which is a historically polished Catholic enclave of Detroit, Sean, now just elected a majority Muslim city council, and this is just starting in America. Again, remember, we are about 10 years behind Europe, so whatever you're seeing in Europe right now is coming directly to the United States.
I have to end it here, but that's a pretty dire prediction.
It is, and
but I've got to roll. I'm sorry.